We've all been there, right? Staring down a big decision, and you just feel completely frozen. And what do? We usually beat ourselves up over it. We call it being indecisive, a character flaw, maybe even a sign of weakness. But what if that feeling, that sensation of being torn into, isn't a flaw at all? What if it's actually a feature? A really high-stakes biological process that's hardwired into our brains for our own survival. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that inner conflict, not as some kind of psychological problem, but as a really fascinating piece of neural engineering. And this just nails it, doesn't it? Just picture that for a second, a chaotic boardroom meeting happening inside your head. See, it's not that you don't know what you want, it's that multiple parts of you want totally different, conflicting things, and every single one of them has a really good reason. We're always told to find that one true voice, to get clarity, but the science, it tells a very different story. The conflict itself isn't the problem, it's actually the whole point of the process. Right, so here's the big idea you have to get your head around. Your brain is not a monarchy with one king calling all the shots. It's much more like a parliament, a big, rowdy assembly of specialized parts or modules. And each one has its own agenda, its own priorities, its own version of what's true. This is why you can deeply love someone and in the very same moment want to get away from them. It's why you can be terrified of starting a new business and at the same time want it more than anything. And that's not you being contradictory, that's how a complex brain works. Getting this is really the first step to breaking that gridlock. Okay, so let's talk about what that internal debate actually feels like. Because this isn't just some abstract mental exercise, right? It's a full body experience. It actually has a name, and just being able to recognize it is a huge deal. We're talking about that tangible, absolutely exhausting feeling of being stuck. I mean, really think about it. Have you ever had a whole afternoon blocked off to do that one important thing? Make that call, start that application, but instead, you just didn't. You just sat there, maybe staring at the walls, scrolling your phone, and by the end of it, you feel completely wiped out, like you just ran a marathon. You did zero physical work, but you're just drained. That's not you being lazy. That is your biology, hard at work. So there's actually a name for this feeling: ambivalence-induced stasis. It's a biological stalemate. Your brain is literally burning a huge amount of metabolic energy, real physical fuel, just to keep these two competing impulses locked in place. You're not going forward, you're not going backward. You are actively and very exhaustingly holding yourself perfectly still. It's basically a state of neurological warfare that leaves you totally fatigued and unable to move. And this right here, this is the perfect picture of what's happening. Imagine you're in a car and you are slamming both the gas pedal and the brake pedal to the floor at the exact same time. The go signal, the gas, that's coming from your ventral striatum. It's your brain's reward center, and it's screaming, yes, let's do this. This will get us status, money, connection. But the stop signal, the brake, that's your amygdala, your threat detector. And it's shouting, whoa, hold on, this is dangerous. We could fail. What will people think? Both of those signals feel 100% true and absolutely vital to your nervous system. And the result? A whole lot of noise, a whole lot of heat, but zero movement. Okay, so we've got the feeling of being stuck down. Now let's pop the hood and take a look at the actual neural hardware that's creating this whole experience. Let's trace the signal through the brain's conflict circuit. And here's what's so wild about this. We experience this inner turmoil as a frustrating bug in our system, right? A glitch we need to fix. But neurologically, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It is a highly sophisticated calculation. Your brain is running this incredibly complex cost-benefit analysis in real time, weighing all the potential rewards against all the potential threats. That feeling of being frozen, that's just the printout from that ongoing calculation. So let's trace the signal, step by step. First, you spot an opportunity. That's signal A, the approach signal. Your reward center lights up. But almost instantly, you get signal B, the avoidance signal, as your risk detectors go on high alert. Now, these two opposing signals get sent to a special part of the brain called the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex. Think of it as the brain's conflict monitor. When the ACC sees this intense tug of war, it basically pulls a fire alarm. And that alarm signal gets shot straight up to your logical brain, the prefrontal cortex, with a clear command: stop everything and figure this out. But here's the trap. Your logical brain tries to solve an emotional war with things like pros and cons lists. It's like asking a calculator to write a love poem. It just doesn't have the right tools for the job. And that right there is what leads to this executive gridlock. You can't pick option A because B feels way too dangerous, but you can't pick B because A feels way too important. So what happens?
The system intentionally starts overheating its own hardware because, from a survival standpoint, it believes making no choice is way safer than making the wrong one, committing a software error. Okay, but why? I mean, this whole setup seems incredibly inefficient for modern life, right? So why on earth would evolution build a brain that actively gets in its own way? Well, to understand that, we've got to zoom out and look at the deep, ancient logic behind this. It's all about a primitive safety lock.
Well, it all boils down to something called a conservative evolutionary strategy. See, for almost all of human history, a mistake wasn't just a learning opportunity. It was often fatal. Guessing wrong about that rustle in the grass or making a social misstep, that could mean you were dead or exiled, which was pretty much the same thing. So our brains evolved to value certainty and safety above everything else. For our neurology, a stalemate, doing nothing, is the safest default setting. The logic is simple. If you don't move, hey, at least you can't fall off a cliff.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? It's the core idea of what's called error management theory. Your brain is wired to always make the less costly error. It assumes that the potential downside of a risky action, like, death, is infinitely worse than the downside of inaction, which might just be boredom or feeling stuck. The humans who were impulsive, the ones who always just went for it, well, they often didn't live long enough to become our ancestors. So we are literally the descendants of the worriers, the overthinkers, the ones who paused long enough to survive.
And therein lies the problem, right? We're running ancient software on modern hardware. It's a phenomenon called evolutionary lag. Our nervous system treats a modern, non-lethal threat, like changing your career, having a tough conversation, or speaking in public, with the exact same life or death intensity as it would facing a predator. That conflict alarm that was designed to save you from a saber-toothed tiger now goes off when you're about to hit send on a scary email. It just doesn't know the difference.
All right, so that's the diagnosis. We get the feeling, the circuit, and the evolutionary why. But what's the prescription? How do we actually break out of this stalemate? Well, the key is to completely shift your role in this drama. You have to stop being the conflict and learn how to start hosting the conflict. And it starts with something surprisingly simple. It's a tiny change in the words you use. We have to stop saying things like, "I'm so torn." Because when you say, "I'm torn," you are identifying yourself completely with that state of conflict. You are the battle. And that leaves zero room for an observer and zero room for a leader to step in. So instead of "I'm torn," try this. Part of me is really excited about this new opportunity, and another part of me is terrified of leaving what's safe. Can you feel the difference? That simple rephrasing creates what neuroscientists call neural space. It puts you back in the driver's seat, letting you look at the feelings instead of being swallowed by them. You're no longer the war zone, you're the one observing the two valid competing sides. Okay, so here's a 4-step playbook to actually do this. First up, modular labeling. That's what we just talked about. Give those voices names if you want, like the adventurer and the guardian. Next, the 2-voice journal. Grab a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. Don't try to solve anything. Just let each part make its case, totally uncensored. Let the adventurer write out all its hopes. Then let the guardian list all its fears. You're just clearing out the system. Third is somatic integration. Stop trying to think your way out of this. Close your eyes and actually feel it in your body. Feel the excitement in your chest and the knot of fear in your stomach at the same time. Just by holding both sensations, you're telling your nervous system this isn't a 5-alarm fire. And finally, the most important step, take a non-fatal action. Don't try to solve the whole thing at once. Just take the smallest possible step that honors both sides. Something like, okay, I'll research that new career for 15 minutes while keeping my safe, stable job. See, you're honoring both ambition and safety.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What's the fundamental shift in perspective that we need to make? It's really about changing your internal job description from being a victim of the conflict to being the leader of the meeting. This, for me, is the most powerful idea of all. The goal is not to silence one voice so the other one can win. The goal is not to have this single, unified, monolithic voice inside your head. That's just not how human beings are built. Real integration, real personal power comes from realizing that you can be one whole person who happens to contain a whole lot of different valid perspectives. You can be the compassionate, wise leader who hears out all the advisors in your inner parliament before making a final decision. And that's the bottom line. That feeling of inner conflict isn't a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that your brain is doing its job. diligently, cautiously, trying to make sure you've considered every possible angle before you make a move. The paralysis, the exhaustion, that comes from just letting the screaming match in the boardroom go on forever. Your job is to step in like the chairperson of the board, thank everyone for their passionate input, acknowledge their concerns, and then you, the leader, make the call. Don't silence the voices, lead the meeting.